As some of you probably watched the Democratic debate last night, and I did a video on my issues with it, but I had recorded it and I turned around and I watched it again, and something struck me as odd. And what it was the vigorous attack that Hillary Clinton made on the senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. It struck me as strange because she hadn't risen to this level in the past, and then I thought about it. And I'm starting to question the polls. And I think that the Clinton campaign is starting to question them too. Iowa supposedly was hers, and now all of a sudden he's in striking distance. Actually, he's in a theoretical tie with her in Iowa. And he basically is blowing her away in New Hampshire. The next contests after Iowa and New Hampshire are Nevada, which is a caucus state, and South Carolina, which is where they had the debate last night. Now, if you analyze the states that they are doing the early contest in, you'll note that Iowa basically is basically it's a white state, evangelical, pretty much, if you want to describe it, middle America, blah blah blah. Okay. New Hampshire is more of a politically savvy state. Again, it's primarily white, but those guys are not as, shall we say, conservative as the people in Iowa. Then you jump to Nevada, where you have a really, a pretty heavy Hispanic population. I say heavy, it's not that heavy, but it's highly unionized. But then you get to South Carolina. South Carolina's population basically is more of a mixture. It's not a white state. The majority, if I'm not mistaken, of the population in the state of South Carolina is African American. Now, way back when Clinton was blowing Bernie away, she always felt like she had South Carolina in her back pocket, just in case something happened. And my thinking is she doesn't believe that anymore. And now she's getting super nervous about the state of Iowa, where she could lose, the state of New Hampshire, where she will lose. Nevada is kind of up in the air, but Bernie supposedly has a pretty decent force on the ground in Nevada. But Nevada, basically, if you had the union backing, you get Nevada. And I think that she has the union backing, but it's not one of those 4th of July fireworks wins if she wins there. But South Carolina is a completely different story. If I was always, and again, let me preference by saying I cannot vote for her, I will vote for Bernie Sanders. That being said, if Bernie Sanders can make major inroads where he can get South Carolina close, he doesn't necessarily have to win it, but if he can get it close, and that was always my fear, that she would blow him out in South Carolina and then run up the score on Super Tuesday. But if he can win Iowa, and that's an if, and he can really blow her up in New Hampshire, and that's a probable. And Nevada, it's a caucus state, so, you know, it counts, it doesn't count, you make the call there. But if he can get close, because she was beating him by like 65, 70 points early on. And if he can get that margin down, either to beat her outright or to keep that margin within, 5 points, 5, 10 points, Super Tuesday turns into a whole new ball game. Now I'm going to play the clip from Andrea Mitchell's show and let you listen to what some of their thoughts are. But just watch her, because I mean, she was really going on a full-blown attack against him.
For nonviolence the day after they waged a political war on the debate stage. The fireworks exploded right from the start, first over guns.
I have made it clear, based on Senator Sanders' own record, that he has voted with the NRA, with the gun lobby, numerous times.
Secretary Clinton knows that what she says is very disingenuous. I have a D- voting record from the NRA.
And then health care. Clinton accusing Sanders of trying to kill Obamacare by proposing a new Medicare for all program.
Now, there are things we can do to improve it, but to tear it up and start over again, pushing our country back into that kind of a contentious debate, I think is the wrong direction.
That is nonsense. What a Medicare for All program does is finally provide in this country health care for every man, woman, and child as a right.
Firing back, Sanders blasted Clinton's ties to Wall Street.
I don't take money from big banks. I don't get personal speaking fees from Goldman Sachs.
I can take that. But he's criticized President Obama for taking donations from Wall Street. And President Obama has led our country out of the Great Recession.
You've received over $600,000 in speaking fees from Goldman Sachs in 1 year.
You're the only one on this stage that voted to deregulate the financial market in 2000.
As to what role her husband would play if she won the White House?
Well, it'll start at the kitchen table. We'll see how it goes from there. And I'm going to ask for his ideas, I'm going to ask for his advice, and I'm going to use him as a goodwill emissary to go around the country to find the best ideas we've got.
Asked whether he regrets having called Bill Clinton's past transgressions disgraceful and unacceptable, Sanders called it old news.
And I mean this seriously. You know that. We've been through this. Yes, his behavior was deplorable. Have I ever once said a word about that issue? No, I have not.
But Sanders showed no reluctance to trumpet his own surge in Iowa and New Hampshire polls.
When this campaign began, she was 50 points ahead of me. We were all of 3 percentage points. Guess what? In Iowa, New Hampshire, the race is very, very close.
And joining me here in Charleston, NBC's Kristen Welker, my partner here on the campaign trail, and in Virginia covering Donald Trump's speech, which just ended at Liberty University, NBC's Katie Tur. Well, Donald Trump took on the Democrats as well, Katie. We'll talk to you about that in a second. I just want to review with Kristen the experience of this debate last night. I mean, this was pretty ferocious for them, and it really indicates what Bernie Sanders was just saying at the end of our piece there.
It absolutely
is
does.
Very close. He is obviously competitive in Iowa and ahead in New Hampshire, next door to his home state of Vermont. And the nightmare scenario for Hillary Clinton is that Bernie Sanders is beginning to really gain strength. According to Jim Clyburn to me last night, the iconic Democratic congressman here, he is really developing an organization here and trying to court African-American voters.
He really is, and that's going to be the key for Bernie Sanders. Andrea, congratulations on a great debate. First of all, it was the most heated, contentious debate I think we have seen yet, and it underscores the fact that Secretary Clinton is really fighting to try to get that strong lead back. It was also fascinating. It sort of became the night of Bernie Sanders because he had just changed positions on that critical piece of gun legislation, which you pointed out in your piece, and because 2 hours before the debate, he released details about how to pay for his health care plan. So a lot of time was spent with Bernie Sanders defending those positions. I think he did it quite robustly, but you saw Hillary Clinton answering incredibly aggressively and hugging President Obama, by the way, countering, trying to counter Bernie Sanders, gaining ground with African-American voters.
And as he's preaching revolution, she's talking about continuity, continuing and protecting the Obama legacy. This was part of those exchanges.
Criticized President Obama for taking donations from Wall Street. Senator Sanders called him weak, disappointing. He even in 2011 publicly sought someone to run in a primary against President Obama. I'm going to defend Dodd-Frank, and I'm going to defend President Obama for taking on Wall Street.
2008, I did my best to see that he was elected, and in 2012, I worked as hard as I could to see that he was reelected.
Your profusion of comments about your feelings toward President Obama are a little strange given what you said about him in 2011.
So, part of this is she's here in South Carolina, right? And President Obama is very, very popular here, and also very popular in Iowa with the progressive Democrats there.
Absolutely. And Andrea, this is part of the Clinton campaign's trying to have a plan A, B, and C. If she were to lose Iowa and New Hampshire, that nightmare scenario that you lay out, South Carolina becomes key, and key to winning South Carolina. About 60% of the voters here are African American. So they make up a critical part of the Democratic voters, right? Exactly. So it's a critical part of winning what could become a very critical state for her.
And Katie Tur, of course, has been listening to more than an hour, I guess, of Donald Trump at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. And he also talked about the Democrats as part of this long speech. Was he also attacking Ted Cruz in this?
Excuse me, I apologize. I didn't want any Donald Trump crap in there, so I'm going to pick it up from here.
Joining me now, also former Pennsylvania governor, former Democratic Party chairman Edward Rendell, and Steve Schmidt, MSNBC contributor and senior advisor to the 2008 presidential campaign. Welcome both, and I know you can hear me over the bands that they're marching by. It's quite a celebration here on Martin Luther King Day. But let's talk first to you, Ed Rendell, about the Democratic debate we experienced here last night. It's really a mark of how close this race has become and how surprising the surge of Bernie Sanders has been in Iowa in particular, that Hillary Clinton is really taking off the gloves.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Let me start by saying I thought you and Lester did a great job handling the debate. I thought the questions were good and the follow-ups were excellent. And the debate tone, although it was contentious over issues, much different than most of the Republican debates, which have been contentious over personalities. I think it is symbolic of the close nature of the race. I think Hillary Clinton scored some points certainly on the gun issue, to lay out all the litany of things that Bernie Sanders has supported, that were NRA-supported legislation. On the other hand, I think Bernie Sanders did a terrific job in taking virtually every question and going back to his basic premise, that it's about income inequality and campaign financing. It almost sounded like a broken record, but that's very effective with his base, very effective in stirring the passion of his base. So I think they both did a good job.
I wanted to play a bit, Ed and Steve, of them arguing over health care and talk to you about that, and to Steve as to how it plays in the general election.
In your health care plan, the plan you released tonight, you would not only raise taxes on the wealthy, the details you released indicate you would raise taxes on the middle class also. Is that correct?
Yes, some middle-class families would be paying slightly more in taxes, but the result would be that that middle-class family would be saving some $5,000 in health care costs.
See, and that's the difference between everybody else and Bernie Sanders. Excuse me. If you ask him a question, he gives you a yes or a no answer, and then he explains it. Clinton and all the rest of these guys, you ask them a question, and they want to take you around the block 3 times before you can nail them down with a specific answer, and a lot of the times that you can't. Now, just a further clarification, Bernie's talking about people having more cash in their pocket at the end of the day. And if they no longer have to pay a monthly premium, let's say of $700, but they end up paying an extra $200, or let's say even $300 in taxes, which they won't. It'll probably be somewhere around $200, $210. Net at the end of the month, they have $490 in their pockets of disposable income that they can spend. So anyway, let's continue.
press on December 20th, you said that you would only raise taxes on the middle class to pay for family leave. And having said that, now you say you're going to raise middle class taxes to pay for health care as well. Is that breaking your word?
No, it is not breaking my word. When you are, it's one thing to say I'm raising taxes, it's another thing to say that we are doing away with private health insurance premiums. So if I save you $10,000 in private health insurance and you pay a little bit more in taxes, in total, there are huge savings in what your family is spending.
Steve Schmidt, is taking a position in favor of raising taxes on the middle class, as well as the other tax increases. How does that play for the Democratic Party going forward in general election matchup?
Look, not particularly well. When you look at the economy, people don't think it's heading in the right direction. Obamacare as a policy, whatever you think of its substantive merits, is unpopular in the middle of the electorate. It's unpopular broadly in the electorate. And I think what you saw last night is a Democratic Party that's for higher taxes, more spending, bigger government.
Untrue.
And it's going to offer a nice contrast for whomever the Republican nominee is. And certainly Bernie Sanders is emphatic on his position with regard to these issues.
And what about Ed Rendell, the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll showing the divide among Democrats and Republicans preferring change versus experience?
Well, that seems to be the case in the last few elections. Clearly, the people who want change are more attracted to Bernie Sanders. The people who want experience and that resume are more attracted to Hillary Clinton. I thought on the health care issue, Andrea, the most poignant exchange was when Hillary Clinton said to Bernie about going to a single-payer, all-Medicare system. He said that when the Democrats control Congress, when we were in control of Congress, we couldn't even get the public option passed as part of Obamacare. I think that's a telling issue, and the issue that people are going to have to come to grips with is what Bernie Sanders is talking about. Is that achievable? Is it realistic? Does it make sense? And that's the question I think the voters are going to resolve, and it's going to be the key question.
And I wanted to also ask you about South Carolina, because in talking with Jim Clyburn here last night, he said that if Bernie wins Iowa by a big margin, and then predictably wins New Hampshire next year to Vermont, this is no longer a firewall for her, that the whole frame of the campaign has changed, and it could very well be an upset here in South Carolina, that he's doing far better, has a better organization than he had expected, and in fact is working really hard to expand his appeal to African American voters who were less familiar with him. What do you make of that?
Well, Andrea, look, there are three very different states. You have a homogenous white liberal states in Iowa and in the state of New Hampshire. State of Iowa, for example, in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, you have more Democrats in Iowa that identify themselves as favoring socialism as opposed to capitalism. South Carolina, not a homogenous white liberal state, very significant African American population broadly, but makes up 60% of the Democratic electorate. So if Bernie Sanders is able to break out of that white, liberal, progressive band of voters and be able to be sellable to African American voters, it's anybody's guess what happens in the Democratic primary. And Hillary Clinton is in trouble if she loses the first two contests, but she's in big trouble if she loses the first three contests in the race for the Democratic primary, and ultimately starts to go down a path where she could lose the nomination if that should be the case.
Jim Clyburn is going to be a kingmaker in this thing. I am telling you. Because if Bernie Sanders can get Jim Clyburn to support him and to endorse him, Hillary Clinton will lose South Carolina. And if she loses South Carolina, whoa, Nelly.